When we last left our heroes, they'd just successfully vandalized a poster into advertising their friend Blinsky's failing toy store, and Edith had just received a strange dream of a creepy tavern in the woods named the Baranor Family Diner. The next morning, the party was interrupted by a bard in a dark red cloak while they were eating breakfast. "You're the people who killed the assassin, right?" "Yes, I was very involved." "Good. Do you know anything about this symbol?" The bard got out a piece of paper and set it on the table. On it was a depiction of a skull with a syringe stabbed into it. Edith looked at the paper and very obviously did not recognize it. "I think it's the symbol of the Assassin's Guild." "I'm just kidding, dearie. Do you want to see my rat?" Edith got out her pet rat and held it up to the bard. And seeing that she clearly wasn't going to get any information here, the bard left. After that incredibly successful social interaction, the party decided to go check out Blinsky's toys, to see if their poster scam from the previous night had worked. And when they arrived, they saw that it was better than they'd hoped. The place was packed with families buying toys for their children. "Hey Blinsky, has it been like this all day?" "Yes, very good sales. Almost too busy. I may have to close early to restock." "No, Blinsky. The point was for you to sell stuff. You need to pay off the wolf rats." You make a good point. The party left Blinsky to deal with his new customers and went down to Merchant Lane. When they got the map, they saw that there was a bunch of notes and messages from the previous owner scribbled in the margins. The most memorable of these notes is that the entire northeast portion of the map was empty, and in large text it was written, "Rumors of treasure, allegedly very dangerous, avoid at all costs." A slightly less significant but more relevant note was next to a small building in the woods north of Amberwood that said, "Haunted? I wonder if the haunted tavern in the middle of the woods is the haunted tavern in the middle of the woods we're looking for." "Since when have we been looking for a haunted tavern in the middle of the woods?" "Since right now when I saw it." "It looks like it'll be a multi-day trip though, and I don't like the idea of being in the Watcher's Forest for that long." "We can take the Watcher, easy." "Alright, fine. We'll go to the haunted tavern. I'll spend the next hour asking around the city for any advice on how to survive in the woods while you all go to the bank to drop off the gambling money we won yesterday." Tenebris left to go do that, while the rest of the party went to the Ambrek Bank, a massive marble building near the center of the city. It was entirely run by dwarves, and the money itself was transported to the nearby dwarven city of Dwalenden for safekeeping, which meant that it was incredibly secure, even if a bank robbery were to happen. However, it would take a few days to withdraw any money from your account. Jay and Edith deposited their money, and as they were getting ready to leave, they saw Sylvester, one of the contestants from the duel the other day. "Hey Sylvester, just wanted to say that we're big fans. We saw the duel yesterday and were wondering if you'd sign this doll for us." Gang handed over the vampire doll that Blinsky had given them last episode and got it signed. Then they went to meet up with Tenebris and find out what he had learned in his research. He'd acquired a handful of helpful tips from various people, such as, do not talk at night, if you have to be out at night, stay on the road, do not light fires, and most importantly, do not make any loud noises. And with that, the party began their trek north along the road into the dark woodlands. Their trip was almost immediately interrupted as they saw an incredibly expensive cart riding down the road towards Amberwood. The party jumped into nearby bushes to hide, and they saw that there were two guards sitting on the front of the cart, and in the back was a wealthy-looking human who was wearing a nice suit. As the cart rode by, Tenebris barely noticed a small sigil on the suit, depicting a skull with a syringe stabbed into it. However, the cart went on its way without noticing the party, and they continued their journey towards the Baranor Family Diner. After a few hours of travel, it was beginning to get dark, and the party saw a group of boggards jump out of the woods around them with weapons at the ready. The leader was wielding a staff with a skull on it, and was clearly a proficient spellcaster. The Boggart Spellseer began speaking loudly to the party in a language none of them could understand, and while he was distracted, Edith's pet rat Hansel quickly walked through the bushes into the middle of the group of attackers. Then, Edith activated one of her spells, which caused the rat to detonate in a massive explosion, which immediately incinerated all of the Boggarts. And as the echoes of the extremely loud detonation slowly faded, the dark woods around them became deathly silent. The party heard the faint moving of air that indicated something was moving towards them, fast. Then they heard the sound of a branch crack, on the other side of the road from where they heard the wind. They looked over in the direction of the sound, and a short distance from the road was a singular lantern resting on the forest ground, and in the dark undergrowth around it, the party saw a vaguely humanoid shadow lurking behind a tree. Jay drew his crossbow, loaded a bolt, and spun around towards the shadow, firing off a quick shot, and it hit the target with a loud thunk. Jay drew his crossbow, loaded a bolt, and spun around towards the shadow, firing off a quick shot. However, the shadowy figure easily dodged the bolt, as if it knew where it was going to land even before it was fired. The party turned and ran into the woods away from it and towards the diner. After a few minutes of running at a dead sprint, they arrived in the clearing that Edith had seen in her dream, and without a second to consider what they should do, they bolted through the doors, spun around, and barricaded them shut behind them. Now, the party had a moment to breathe. They looked around the room and saw that there were broken tables and corpses strewn about the area. In the very center of the room was a massive pentagram on the ground, made of dried blood, and resting in the center of the pentagram was a completely intact table with a jade sphere on top of it. Edith walked over to the sphere and began to try to identify what it was. It looks like there's something trapped inside. However, her investigation was cut short when the corpses around the room rose up and began to attack the party. It wasn't too bad of a fight, except a few of the undead had crossbows with special heavy bolts that pushed their targets back. And after the fight was over, Jay immediately looted the heavy bolts so that he could use them later. Now that the fight was over, Edith was able to finish her investigation of the crystal. It seems that there is a pit fiend trapped inside the crystal, and if the crystal ever breaks or is activated, he'll get loose. I'm sorry, did you say a pit fiend? Yup. Edith immediately put the jade sphere into her bag. And I've decided to take it, so that our enemies don't get it. After that, the party quickly looted the rest of the building, and they found some money in a bag, along with account information about the old restaurant owner's account at the Ambrek Bank. Do you think we could use this to withdraw all of his money? It's worth a shot, we'll have to try when we get back to Amberwood. However, the most significant item they found was a small dark purple crystal, similar to the one that Edith had found on the corpse of Lanson Elafir back in the graveyard in episode 2. When Edith picked it up, she found that both this new crystal, as well as the old one, now looked slightly different. They now seemed to be faintly reflective. However, they weren't reflecting the decrepit restaurant around her. Instead, they were reflecting a barren, dark landscape, with storm clouds stretching out in every direction, and dark purple lightning striking in the distance. After a quick investigation, Edith was able to put together that these shards are all a part of a whole, and that there were likely more out there to find. She quickly pocketed the item before the rest of the party could see, because this must have been what her patron wanted her to travel here for, and she didn't want the others to mess up her plans. After that, the party slept in the back room of the Baranor family diner, and the next day they managed to travel back to Amberwood without any incidents. When they arrived, it was night, and they immediately began to move towards the Ambrek Bank to try to use the account information they had found. However, on the way they spotted Ranthorn, the half-elf sorcerer they had traveled to the graveyard with back in episode 2. Immediately suspicious of the fact he was walking around at night, the party tailed him to a place called Van Moorn's bookstore. Jay went in to figure out what Ranthorn was buying there, and he went over to the owner, a halfling sitting behind a desk. I don't care what we talk about, but we need to look like we're having a conversation so that I can spy on what your other customer is buying. Well, alrighty then. Van Morn began telling Jay a story about a legendary magic battle axe named Justice that was made of eldritch obsidian and had gone missing a long time ago. While the conversation was happening, Jay spotted that Ranthorn was looking at a book titled A Commoner's Guide to Advanced Blood Magic. I think I found the information I was looking for. Thank you for the help here. Have a nice night, and if you would ever like to buy some books, then feel free to come back to Van Morn's bookstore. I mean, my bookstore. I'm Van Morn. Thanks. I'll be sure to give it a glowing recommendation. The party was now slightly worried about what Ranthorn was doing, but first they wanted to get the money from the bank, so they traveled over there. But when they arrived, they quickly realized that they wouldn't be able to go in there tonight. The large adamantine doors into the bank were shut, and the entire building was surrounded by guards who were set up in a large circle around it. Between the building and the City Watch's perimeter was a field of dead guards, crossbow bolts, and scorch marks. There were floating runestones in the sky casting floodlights down over the entire area, and on all of the buildings surrounding the bank, the guards had snipers posted, with heavy crossbows on tripods and scopes aimed at every entrance and exit. This was the largest heist in the history of the island. However, what none of the guards knew is that deep in the bowels of the Ambrek Bank, there was an ancient relic encased in a tomb of stone, and the criminals were working to uncover it and claim it for themselves.